There is something you do every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, that contains more information about your health than most blood tests your doctor orders. It takes about 30 seconds. You barely think about it, and then you flush it away. Your stool is one of the most precise diagnostic tools your body produces. Gastroenterologists, doctors who specialize in the digestive system, are trained to analyze it in detail. Color, consistency, shape, frequency, smell. Each variable tells a specific story about what is happening inside your gut, your liver, your pancreas, your immune system, and even your brain. The problem is that nobody talks about it. It is the health topic that gets avoided in conversation, skipped in health education, and flushed before anyone thinks to look. And that silence has consequences. Research suggests that some of the most serious gastrointestinal conditions, including colorectal cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, and liver disease, show their earliest warning signs in stool changes months or even years before any other symptom appears. In this video, we are going to change that. We are going to walk through exactly what your stool is made of, what the color variations actually mean, what consistency tells you about your digestive health, and what specific warning signs you should never ignore. By the end of this video, you will understand something about your body that most people never learn, and you will never look at a toilet the same way again. Section 1. What stool actually is. The science behind what you're flushing. Let's begin with the foundation, because most people have a completely incorrect idea of what stool actually consists of. The common assumption is that stool is simply undigested food, the leftovers your body could not use. This is fundamentally wrong. In a healthy adult, stool is approximately 75% water. Of the remaining 25%, roughly one-third is bacteria, both living and dead, from your gut microbiome. Another third is indigestible fiber and plant material. The final third is a combination of fats, proteins, dead cells shed from the intestinal lining, bile pigments, and mucus. This composition tells you something immediately important. Your stool is not a waste product in the way we typically think of waste. It is a highly processed output of one of the most complex biological systems in your body, the digestive tract, running approximately 9 meters from mouth to rectum, has been breaking down, absorbing, and processing everything you eat for the past 24 to 72 hours before anything exits as stool. The journey begins in the stomach, where food is broken down by acid and enzymes. It then passes into the small intestine, a 6-meter tube where the majority of nutrient absorption occurs. What remains moves into the large intestine, or colon, where water is absorbed, bacteria ferment remaining fibers, and the material is compacted into its final form. The entire process typically takes between 24 and 72 hours, though this varies considerably between individuals. What you see at the end of that process is a direct reflection of everything that happened along the way, which is precisely why it carries so much diagnostic information. Section 2. The color code. What every shade is telling you. Color is one of the most informative and most misunderstood variables in stool analysis. The normal color range is broader than most people realize, and the abnormal colors carry specific meanings that are worth understanding in detail. The primary pigment responsible for stool color is something called stercobilin, a brown compound produced when bacteria in the colon break down bilirubin. Bilirubin itself is a yellow pigment produced when the liver breaks down old red blood cells. This chain, red blood cells to bilirubin to stercobilin, is why healthy stool is brown. The shade of brown can vary considerably based on diet, transit time, and bile production, and all shades of brown are generally normal. Yellow stool, however, deserves attention. When stool appears yellow or greasy, it typically indicates that fat is not being properly absorbed in the small intestine. This can result from conditions affecting the pancreas, which produces the enzymes needed to break down fat, or from conditions affecting the small intestine itself. Celiac disease in which the immune system reacts to gluten and damages the intestinal lining, frequently presents with yellow, greasy, foul-smelling stool before any other symptoms appear. Green stool is usually benign. It most commonly occurs when transit time is faster than usual. The stool moves through the colon too quickly for bilirubin to complete its conversion to brown stercobilin. Green leafy vegetables and certain food dyes can also produce green stool. However, persistently green stool without an obvious dietary explanation can sometimes indicate a bacterial infection. Pale, clay-colored, or white stool is a signal that should always be taken seriously. This color occurs when bile is absent from the stool, either because the liver is not producing adequate bile or because a blockage in the bile ducts is preventing bile from reaching the intestine. Conditions that can cause this include gallstones blocking the bile duct, liver disease, and in some cases, pancreatic cancer. Black terry stool, particularly stool that has an unusually foul, metallic odor, is a medical emergency. This presentation, called melena, occurs when blood from the upper digestive tract, the stomach or small intestine, has been digested during its transit through the gut, turning it black. Iron supplements and bismuth medications like Pepto-Bismol can also cause black stool, but black terry stool without an obvious cause requires immediate medical evaluation. Bright red blood in or on the stool indicates bleeding in the lower digestive tract, the colon, rectum, or anus. This can result from hemorrhoids, which are swollen veins in the rectum or anus and are extremely common and generally not dangerous. But it can also indicate more serious conditions, including colorectal cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, or diverticular disease. Bright red blood should never be assumed to be hemorrhoids without evaluation. Section 3. Shape and Consistency, the Bristol Stool Scale. In 1997, researchers at the University of Bristol developed what is now called the Bristol Stool Scale, a 7-type classification system for stool form that has become the international standard for clinical stool assessment. Understanding it gives you a precise language for what your gut is telling you. Type 1 is separate hard lumps, like small pellets or nuts, that are difficult to pass. This represents severe constipation, stool that has spent so long in the colon that almost all water has been absorbed from it. The colon's primary function is water absorption, and when transit time is very slow, it absorbs too much, leaving hard, compacted material. Type 2 is sausage-shaped but lumpy, still indicating constipation, though less severe than Type 1. Type 3 is sausage-shaped with cracks on the surface. This is at the normal range. Type 4 is smooth and soft, like a sausage or snake, and is considered the ideal stool form. Easy to pass, well-formed, holds its shape. Type 5 is soft blobs with clear-cut edges, slightly too loose, suggesting the stool moved through the colon faster than ideal. Type 6 is fluffy pieces with ragged edges, indicating diarrhea tendency with insufficient water absorption. Type 7 is entirely liquid with no solid pieces. Diarrhea, meaning transit was so fast that virtually no water was absorbed in the colon. The critical insight from the Bristol scale is that stool form is a direct measure of colonic transit time. Types 1 and 2 mean too slow. Type 6 and 7 mean too fast. Type 3 and 4, and to a lesser extent Type 5, represent the healthy range. Chronic deviation in either direction is associated with gut microbiome disruption, inflammation, and in the long term, increased risk of colorectal disease. Transit time itself, how long food takes to travel from mouth to toilet, can be measured simply at home by eating a food that produces a visible marker in stool, such as corn or beets, and timing how long it takes to appear. Research suggests that healthy transit time falls between 24 and 48 hours. Consistently under 10 hours suggests the gut is not absorbing nutrients adequately. Consistently over 72 hours indicates significant constipation. Section 4. Frequency, smell, and the warning signs that demand attention. The final variables, frequency and odor, complete the picture, and the warning signs section of this video is the one that could genuinely matter for your long-term health. Frequency first. The medically accepted normal range for stool frequency is broad, anywhere from 3 times per day to 3 times per week. What matters more than frequency is consistency. A person who has always had one bowel movement per day and suddenly shifts to 3 or 4 per day for weeks without a clear dietary explanation has experienced a significant change that warrants evaluation. Conversely, someone who has always had less frequent bowel movements but is comfortable and producing well-formed stool is not necessarily experiencing a problem. Odor is perhaps the most universally uncomfortable aspect of this topic, but it carries real diagnostic information. Stool has an odor primarily because of gases produced by bacterial fermentation in the colon, particularly hydrogen sulfide and other sulfur compounds. Some odor is entirely normal and is primarily determined by diet, particularly high protein and high sulfur foods. However, stool that is dramatically and persistently more foul-smelling than usual, particularly when accompanied by changes in color or consistency, can indicate malabsorption, bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine, or infection. The particularly foul, greasy smell associated with yellow stool is a reliable indicator of fat malabsorption. Now, the warning signs. There are specific changes that gastroenterologists classify as red flag symptoms requiring prompt medical evaluation. A persistent change in bowel habits lasting more than 3 to 4 weeks, including a change in frequency, consistency, or shape without a clear dietary explanation. Blood in the stool, whether bright red or black and tarry. Stool that is consistently pencil thin, which can indicate narrowing of the colon from a growth or polyp. Mucus in the stool in significant quantities, which can indicate inflammatory bowel disease. And stool accompanied by unexplained weight loss, abdominal pain, or fatigue. None of these symptoms necessarily mean something serious is happening. Most people who experience them have benign explanations, but they are the body's signaling system, and they are designed to be noticed. The digestive system is extraordinarily communicative. It produces information every single day. The science of reading that information is not complicated. It simply requires paying attention to what your body has been trying to tell you all along. Now you know how to listen.